Good evening. This is the 37th time I have spoken to you from this office, where so many decisions have been made that shape the history of this nation. Each time I have done so to discuss with you some matter that I believe affected the national interest. In all the decisions I have made in my public life, I have always tried to do what was best for the nation. Throughout the long and difficult period of Watergate, I have felt it was my duty to persevere, to make every possible effort to complete the term of office to which you elected me. To leave office before my term is complete is abhorrent to every instinct in my body. But as president, I must put the interest of America first. America needs a full-time president and a full-time Congress, particularly at this time with problems we face at home and abroad. To continue to fight through the months ahead for my personal vindication would almost totally absorb the time and attention of both the President and the Congress in a period when our entire focus should be on the great issues of peace abroad and prosperity without inflation at home. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office. As I look back upon the decisions I have made during this period, I cannot help but recall one of the nation's first quarrels between Colonel Aaron Burr and General Alexander Hamilton. Healthy competition fuels the American political system. However, when competition between opposing parties escalates, the result is disastrous. Successful politicians must clash to win elections, as seen in the 1795 New York governor's race between John Jay and Aaron Burr. Hamilton strongly supported John Jay, who went on to win the election and spoke aggressively against Burr. Comments where Hamilton referred to Burr as a dangerous man who ought not to be trusted with the reins of government sparked the subsequent events. General Hamilton refused to acknowledge or deny his claims. In turn, Burr challenged Hamilton to a duel, which Hamilton accepted. The outcomes not only affected the career and life of Hamilton, but it destroyed Burr's political career as well, as Americans viewed him as a murderer. The actions of both Hamilton and Burr drove the competition to a lethal level. Like the men instrumental to the founding of the country, my actions to conceal the break-ins at Watergate Complex drove my competition to a damaging level. Should I have recalled the Burr-Hamilton duel immediately following the break-in, I would not have permitted actions which could harm my opponents. The Central Intelligence Agency would not have been instructed to conceal the events, like Hamilton's mistake of refusing to acknowledge his statements. Now it is clear that damaging one's enemy only leads to failure. Only immoral actions can result from damaging the Democrats, and therefore I must resign the presidency immediately. To have served in this office is to have felt a very personal sense of kinship with each and every American. In leaving, I do so with this prayer. May God's grace be with you in all the days ahead. After my presidency, I read several pieces of literature covering all periods of American history. Founding Brothers, the Revolutionary Generation especially stood out in my mind. Joseph Ellis emphasized the importance of being a great mediator in the section, The Dinner, of Founding Brothers, the Revolutionary Generation. Thomas Jefferson played an essential role by mediating two substantial arguments between Northern and Southern ideologies. Politicians from the Northern states, led by Alexander Hamilton, supported a proposal for the federal government to assume state debts from the Revolutionary War. Southern politicians opposed the plan and advocated a more southern location for the new nation's capital city, which displeased the residents of the North. Jefferson held a dinner for each side's influential members, Madison of the South and the North's representative, Alexander Hamilton. His goal became to aid in the negotiations and provide each side with its desires. Without the arbitration and compromises made under Jefferson's leadership, the fragile Union could have easily been separated. During my presidency, a similar situation occurred with foreign countries Israel, Egypt, and Syria, which affected the stability and success of major economies around the world. Syria and Egypt attacked Israel in an attempt to regain the Gaza Strip, Golan Heights, and West Bank, all territories which Israel acquired after the Six-Day War of 1967. Looking back, I approached the conflict with a goal to negotiate with foreign countries. However, I focused on the Soviet Union rather than the countries directly involved in the dispute, and my only priority was Israel. Disregard to Egyptian and Syrian perspective created feelings of anger and hatred towards the United States, which led to immense increases in oil prices in 1973. Like Jefferson, I should have recognized both sides in the conflict. Perhaps offering Syria and or Egypt some land would have prevented outrage against the United States. Understanding the motivations and rationale of the Syrians and Egyptians would have resulted in a more peaceful conclusion without economic sanctions on the oil industry. Had I mediated these disputes in a manner similar to Jefferson, a more desirable outcome would have been obtained. April 30th, 1975. Yesterday, the final evacuation of all U.S. personnel from Vietnam was complete. This took place more than a decade after the country became involved in the conflict. I commanded the American forces for over 5 years and could not conclude the affair. What could I have done differently? Now that I have the time to analyze my successes and my mistakes, it became clear to me that I should not have expanded the war to Cambodia. I read many books on United States military and political history, but one page written by Joseph Ellis particularly applied to decisions made by my administration. The final report passed by the House, in effect, placed any and all debate over slavery as it existed in the South out of bounds forever. What had begun as an initiative to put slavery on the road to extinction had become transformed into a decision to extinguish all federal plans for emancipation. A relieved George Washington wrote home to a Virginia friend that the slave business has at last been put to rest and will sacrifice awake. As usual, Washington was right. Congress had moved gradual emancipation off its political agenda. Whatever window of opportunity had existed to complete the once glaring piece of unfinished business in the Revolutionary era was now closed. Slavery required immediate action by Congress in order to be abolished and the slaves emancipated. Congress could not accomplish this task. As a result, the federal government permitted slavery, a decision that would not be changed for nearly a century. When the government faces a major problem, it must be dealt with immediately. Congress did not act promptly, and in effect, civil war broke out nearly a century later. Almost 200 years later, I made the same mistake by expanding the Vietnam War into Cambodia. Former President Lyndon Johnson immersed the United States into Asia to a point where honorable peace became impractical, but not impossible. When I took office, I acted like the 1790 Congress and did not take action to terminate the existing conflict. Instead, I commenced bombings in Cambodia starting in 1969, which increased the difficulty of honorably withdrawing from the war. In contrast, the now obvious solution was to act by removing troops from Vietnam. Vietnamization should have been the only plan practiced by the military to escape an extensive war. One of the major disappointments of my administration was the publication of the Pentagon Papers. I believe the report should not have been published during the Vietnam War to avoid the loss of American support. George Washington faced a similar situation regarding John Jay's treaty with the British following the Revolutionary War. The treaty highly favored Great Britain, creating opposition among many Americans who felt we should not negotiate a treaty with a country that America just fought against for independence. However, Jay's treaty created and maintained peace with Britain. The United States desperately needed peacetime to improve the state of the military. President Washington supported the treaty despite popular opinion because it was in the best interest of the country. During the Vietnam War, Daniel Ellsberg leaked the Pentagon Papers to Time magazine, which revealed many government secrets and wrongdoings during the war, such as attacks in Cambodia before our government announced such actions. American support for the war quickly diminished, making an already improbable conclusion to the war even more difficult to achieve. Following Washington's precedent, I should have used all the constitutional weapons in my arsenal to prevent the papers from being published, with emphasis on constitutional. These legal weapons include prosecuting Ellsberg for espionage and using my power as president to influence the Times magazine. Publishing the papers only produced opposition to the Vietnam War. Like George Washington, I should have did what was in the best interest of the country and prevented the Pentagon Papers publication. We need to make a decision quickly, Henry. What do you think we should do?
It's a tough decision, Mr. President. Take your time. Think about it.
What do you think? Oh, I don't have many advisors. John Adams signed the controversial Alien and Sedition Acts, which primarily targeted immigrants who published malicious information about the government. Ellis claimed John Adams would not have signed such unconstitutional acts without the guidance of his wife, Abigail. People became outraged with Adams for signing the Alien and Sedition Acts, which was one of his greatest mistakes as a president. This shows the importance of having numerous advisors to give input on a situation and provide many perspectives. My style only included a few advisors, later to become known as the Berlin Wall. I trusted only a few men, including Henry Kissinger, John Ehrlichman, and H.R. Haldeman. I should have implemented a more effective system by having more advisors to guide me through tough decisions.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Hello, is Representative Conyers there?
1 minute, please. Hello, yes.
Hello, Representative Conyers. This is former President Richard Nixon. How are you today?
Very fine, thank you for asking.
I am calling to apologize for my actions during my presidency. It was inappropriate for the President of the United States to compile an enemies list with your name on it. I recently read about Thomas Jefferson and John Adams rekindling their relationship following both of their political careers. I hope you accept my apology and we can remain acquaintances.
I see no reason why I can't accept this apology. You seem very sincere.
Thank you for your understanding, Representative. Have a wonderful day, and my best wishes go out to your family.
Well, thank you, and same to yours.
Goodbye.